Okay, Nun Bays Amid Bays. We are roughly 16 lines from the bottom. There's the two dots. And we just started into Omer of Papa, which we'll start with in a moment. Again, we're closing in on the end of the discussion with regard to the coinage system and what was appropriate if coins started withering and were no longer equal to the face value. Can you use it? What can you use it for? That was the whole discussion. And we're going to sort of close that discussion out. Very interestingly, what we're going to see today, Mitch, very shortly, is that we're going to depart from that whole subject for a couple of blots. In other words, we're not finished with it, but we're going to depart from that subject and digress, as we often do, because the Gemara will digress into a different subject. So very shortly, we're going to see what's happening here in the discussion. We'll get back to this whole discussion in a number of weeks when we come back, but meantime, a couple of blot are kind of a little bit of a diversion of an interesting subject. So we'll get to that in a moment. First, we were talking about the end of the Mishnah, where the Mishnah says that if a person uses a coin that has lost its sort of value because of the decline of the actual physical coinage, right? So in other words, you have a seller that's no longer worth a seller. What can you do with it? And the Mishnah ends by saying that you can use it to be mechalel, to deconsecrate masa sheni, right? In other words, you can use that coin to buy masa sheni chutz la'aretz, and then take that coin to Yerushalayim, cash it in, and eat masa sheni in Yerushalayim. And remember, this whole masa sheni is a function of the owner. It has nothing to do with Kaya and Levi, nothing else. It's just he has consecrated fruit that he can't eat in Haifa and Tel Aviv or wherever. It's got to go to Yerushalayim. So he deconsecrates it by taking by as it were buying the value of the food onto a coin. And here the subject is, what happens if the coin has degraded and isn't worth its face value? That's kind of where we are. And so we said basically that if someone does not appreciate the value of the coin for Masa Sheni, then he has a nefesh ra. He has there's an ill will, if you will, in his soul, if he doesn't fully embrace the mitzvah of Masa Sheni with the full value of the coinage. In other words, if I'm buying something that is non-kodesh, okay, fine. The coin maybe is not worth a shekel anymore. It's worth a shekel, it's worth whatever. But for Masa Sheni, you're going to quibble. That's kind of where the Gemara is, that you shouldn't quibble on Masa Sheni and say, okay, I'm not going to give you the full value. That's kind of where we are. So we ended by saying, Omer of Papa. So, which is, again, it's the two dots about 16 or so lines from the bottom of Nun Beis Omid Beis.
So, right? Rabbi, I just have a quick question.
Yes.
What you just said, that means the value of the coin is carrying its full value for it. It's not being diminished.
For purposes of Masa Sheni, correct. For purposes of Masa Sheni, if you don't diminish the value for Masa Sheni. And that's the discussion here that we're going to enter, right? So, Omer of Papa, so by saying that if someone doesn't appreciate the full value of the coin from Masa Sheni, then you have Ruach Ra. Shema Mina, says Rav Papa, from this Gemara we can learn, Hai man, the Mokim Azuzeh. In other words, this is where we ended, that there's two different types of issues. There's an issue of a coin that was a selah. It still is a selah, but its face has shrunk so that it's no longer worth, let's say, a selah, which is $1. Okay, it's worth 75 cents, whatever. And then Haiman de Mukimazuze, if someone is reluctant to take a coin that isn't diminished because of its physical depletion, so to speak, it's because the coin itself has a defect. For instance, you buy a coin that's bent, right? I mean, if you have a bent coin, you can't put it in a meter, so to speak. I mean, you have to have a nice round coin. You have a coin that somehow got bent in the metal. That's called a defective coin, not a diminished coin. Different coin. So Rav Papa wants to give us a chiddush. Hi man the mukim azuze. If someone doesn't want to take a coin that became defective, but it's a whole coin, but it's defective, then mukre nefesh ra. So Rav Papa is extending the concept of nefesh ra to someone who doesn't want to accept a defective coin as opposed to a diminished coin. So that's his chiddush.
Hey, Rabbi,
Yeah.
this is only the beginning of the story back at the farm. When he comes to Yerushalayim, he's not going to get full value.
So that's now going to be the whole discussion. We're going to see in a minute. That's going to be the discussion here, which we're about to. Is what happens. Whatever he does in Chutz La'aretz may not match up with what he does in Yerushalayim, and that's an important factor.
So
you're right.
The second part of the story, when he has to do something with this coin, that's when he gets into trouble.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's one thing for him to accept the coin. In other words, he's got a coin and he wants to redeem the maser. So who's going to oppose him? He says it's worth a seller. I'll buy a seller worth and I'll go. But once you start dealing with the money changers and with other things in Yerushalayim, that's where you're going to get into trouble. Yeah. That's where the Gemara is now going to take us to show us that what's the real value of the coin. The coin can't be more valuable than the least amount a recipient will accept. If a money changer isn't going to accept a seller and he says it's worth a seller, he's out of luck. So who's going to lose? Technically, the loss will be Maser Sheni, because you're supposed to eat this Maser Sheni in Yerushalayim and it has Kedusha, and you instead of eating a bushel full of Maser Sheni, you're going to eat a half a bushel because the money changers aren't going to give you a bushel worth.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where the problem arises. Exactly. So to finish Rav Papa, V'hana mili hu desagale. So Rav Papa has a caveat on his principle. His principle is that if you have a defective coin, you have to accept it only when it'll be accepted by people in circulation. In other words, if such a coin won't circulate, it's not a coin. It's only as good as the people who will use it as a coin. So that's the chiddush here that Rav Papa is making, is that a defective coin and of course we extrapolate that we mean a deficient coin too, but a defective coin is only as good as people who will accept it. If someone says, I'm not accepting a coin that has a right angle because it's bent, then you're out of luck.
What's the chiddush here? I mean, it'd be obvious.
No, because he's saying that if someone doesn't accept it, you have ruach ra, that you have a bad disposition if you don't accept for Maser Sheni. If you don't accept a coin for Maser Sheni, then you're considered ill-willed individual. You can't be an ill-willed individual if no one's going to accept the coin. So that's why he's putting a caveat and saying, yes, you have to accept it. But if it's to the point where people won't even accept it, then how can you redeem it? You can't redeem it with a coin that the world is not going to accept. By and large, if it's a little bit of a nick or whatever the problem with the coin is, people will say, okay, maybe the money changers won't give you full value, but it's a coin in circulation. How many times, I don't get it very often, do you get a coin that is so maligned and mangled that you can almost say it's not a coin? But as long as it's in circulation and people will accept it, sometimes people accept it without even, you get change. You see if something that looks like a dime, it's a dime. It may not be much of a dime, but it's still a dime because that's what it looks like. So
but the chiddush is that he has ill will.
The chiddush that he has ill will if he's not willing to accept up to the point, right?
Okay, that's the chiddush. I thought the chiddush had to do with the coins, but no, it's about him.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Yeah, so an extreme situation probably wouldn't happen much, but you've seen these. I'm sure you've all seen these things they have at rest stops on the turnpike and stuff, where you put in a penny and then a dollar to pay for it, and it takes the penny and stretches it out, or it imprints something else on it, whatever, mangles it, and in theory, on the one hand, it is still a penny. It's still the same amount of copper, zinc, whatever, but it's not, and anybody who looks at it would know it came from a penny, but it doesn't really look like a penny. Now, arguably, nobody should be throwing that in to pay for, so that, penny worth of merchandise. But you could argue if you got it that, well, this is no longer a normal penny.
Well, so that's the question. Is this is it defective to the point where it's now been stretched or done something, something's been done to it that you can no longer say it's a penny, and therefore Papa would admit that there's no ruach ra when you have a coin that is not going to be acceptable in circulation. You can't be considered a man of ill will if no one's going to accept the coin. It's got to be something that is still acceptable, even if it's in a altered state. So that's Rav Papa's chiddush, but he's mechadish it not only with regard to a diminished coin, but also with regard to a defective coin. Okay, so that's Rav Papa. So now the Gemara says, okay, so now, Messiah Leilachizkieh, this is a raya, what we've now just discussed in terms of Papa, and the whole Inyan is a raya to Chizkiah. What is Chizkiah's principle? The Omar Chizkiah, because Chizkiah said, Bo Laporta, if someone wants to exchange a coin, and wants to get smaller coin, let's say as a seller, and he wants to get four dinarim or 2 shkalim, there's $1 for 4 quarters, whatever it is, then porta b'shavia. So here's the point. He can exchange the seller for the amount that the seller is worth. So if the seller has been degraded and is now worth a shekel, then all he can get is 2 dinarim. He can't get 4 dinarim because it no longer is worth 4 dinarim. So in the regular course of commerce, we go by the value of the coin when you want to exchange it, because it now has diminished value. But, says Chizkiah, if he wants to exchange it for Masa Sheni, for something that has Kedusha, then Mechala B'Yofe, then the exchange can be for what the face value of the coin is, even if the coin has been degraded. So in other words, for Chol, we actually say that the coin is not worth $1 anymore. It's not worth a seller. But for Kedusha, for the Chil Kodesh, it is. And that's a direct raya from Rav Papa, because Rav Papa just said that when it comes to being Mechalel, that there's no, you shouldn't have ruach ra, you should accept it at full value. So this is a raya to Chizkiah, who makes a distinction between exchanging for regular chols things, in other words, not kedusha, or for kedusha. For kedusha, he's saying inherently you shouldn't have ruach ra. You should be able to mechal it for its full value, even if it has been. This is
an opportunity for abuse. Now, maybe the idea is that people wouldn't abuse such things for kedusha, but still, I'm a merchant, and somebody tries to pay with this messed up, worn down coin. And I look at it and say, I'm not going to take that as a full value. I'll give you half value. And the guy says, okay, yeah, it's worn down. Okay, fine. So I've now accepted that at half value. And now I turn around and use it to go to pay for a davar kedusha. I'm getting full value out of it.
Gives tzedakah to the base of Migdash, and he's racking. He doesn't get.
Well, the problem is that if it's just simply tzedakah, that's you're putting in the pushka, and they had pushka there, in the Navi somewhere. Then that's fine. So whatever you're putting in. But if you're using this to actually pay for korbanos or other things, whatever, then you're cheating. Either cheating hekdesh or cheating somebody else.
You're cheating hekdesh, though. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. So
you don't want to carry on a defective coin at its full value through the next process step or whatever it is.
Right. So
to you, half value coin.
Right. But your question earlier, Jay, was, okay, now he's in Yerushalayim and he has this coin which has been consecrated by the Masa Sheni. Now, so what's the point? He goes to the changer and he says, I'd like to get frutos Because remember what we said a while back, that one of the things that you do when you have larger coins, you want to get smaller coins because you're going to be in Yerushalayim for several days, and you're not necessarily going to buy a seller's worth of food at one time because you have to eat it. So you want to get small coins so you can buy, let's say, a shekel worth or a couple of dinarim worth. You go to the restaurant or you go to whatever it is and you exchange it. And now you don't use all the money at one time. So you're going to the money changer. So conceptually, are we saying, this is the question, are we saying that the money changer, well, he knows it's oil regel, everybody's coming. So does he say to the person, why are you changing this coin? Are you changing it because you just want small change? Or are you changing it because you have a davar shebekadusha that you have to buy? Because from Chizkiya's Chiddush, what Chizkiya is telling us is if you're coming to change for just small change so you don't have a big coin in your pocket, for that, we're going to give you actual value. But if you come to change it for Master Sheni because you now want to have a davar shebekadusha, then mechalel biyofe. Then you mechalel. So who is going to change it for you? You got to have someone to change it. The money changer will change it for you. And l'chayra, according to Chizkiya, what it seems to say is that the money changer will give you more money for your deficient coin if you tell him this is for davar shebekadusha. That's what it seems to be, because how else? We're talking about being in Yerushalayim already. He already left Tel Aviv, he left Haifa, he's now in Yerushalayim, he wants to make a change, and Chizkiya tells us a chiddush that if he's changing for regular changing purposes, you don't get the benefit of the higher value. It's only shaveh. But if you're changing it for kedusha, then machalel biyofe. The word yofe is the key word. So your machalel biyofe, yofe means for its beautiful or good value, which is the original value of the seller, and then you get full value. So l'chayra, it seems.
What does a money changer do with this coin? If it
Okay, so now what's the money changer going to do with the coin? The money changer is in business. He's not here to be he's not here to necessarily assist you in a davar shebekadusha. He wants to make a buck. How is he going to make a buck here? So this is the question. This is the chiddush of Chizkiya that he's coming to say, based on what we learned from Rav Papa about ruach ra, that as long as the coin is in circulation, then you have a ruach ra. If you don't exchange it, says Chizkiya, I'm going to make this distinction between changing for chol, basically for mundane matters, for which you get actual value, and changing for kedusha, Maser Sheni, for which you're going to get a yafa value. That's how it appears the Gemara is telling us the chiddush of Chizkiya. Otherwise, what's the chiddush? What is the chiddush here? Okay, so now the Gemara is going to get into Chizkiya's statement. So l'chayra, it seems that Chizkiya is telling us two things. He's telling us first that exchanging for chol regular is b'shaveh, and exchanging for kedusha is b'yafa. That's what it seems to say. Says the Gemara, my ka'amar. What does Chizkiya really? What is this that we just learned? The Gemara wants to explain a little bit deeper what Chizkiya is saying. Hachi kama, says the Gemara. This is what really Chizkiya has in mind. Afal pi shekeshibol lepurta purta b'shava. Even though, if you come in the normal course to a money changer and you have a coin that isn't worth a seller, and you want to change it to small coins, the money changer isn't going to give you a seller worth of small coins. Afapi, even though kishuhu mechalala, when he's coming to be mechalel for Maser Sheni, mechalel beyofe, then he can actually be mechalel it for Yafa. So it's what Chizkiya is telling us. It's one chiddush, not two separate chidushim. One chiddush for regular and one chiddush. It's almost like, I want to express myself clearly. If you're coming for this, then all you get is this. But if you come for this, then you're going to get. Now, maybe when we read it, that's what we understood. But the Gemara wants to make it very, very clear that's the way it should be. Now, what do you do with the money changers? So that's really still the question, because the money changer isn't going to necessarily say, all right, Chizkiya said it, so I got to do it. No, the money changers are in business to do business. And if they see a coin that's deficient, then you're going to have a problem. So the Gemara the Gemara doesn't force the money changers to fall into line. It's not what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara is saying that that from the standpoint of the owner of the Maser Sheni, that he's entitled to a larger amount. In other words, he himself is not cheating Maser Sheni because he exchanged it for a selah, and now he's coming to Yerushalayim and getting less than a selah. That's not on him. Chizkiah wants to be clear. It's not on the owner of the fruit who did a sort of an underhanded thing. He did it because technically that's the way it should be. In the best case situation, it should be that way. The fact that he's running into money changers who won't give him that money, that's not on him. There's nothing he can do because he did right. So Chizkiah is validating the owner of the Maser Sheni that he didn't do something wrong by exchanging for Yafeh, even if he comes to Yerushalayim and doesn't get Yafeh. Let's say he only gets Shaveh, it's then he didn't do anything wrong. I think that's really how we have to look at it. We'll take a look at Rashi. Yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me. So at the time this is going on, that time period, didn't the Beis HaMikdash have a money changer equivalent of somebody who takes in the money? He could go right to the Beis HaMikdash, and there they'll give him full value for a defective coin, and they'll give him small coins, and he leaves the Beis HaMikdash and he's happy. Why should he go to a commercial money changer?
Right. So that's an interesting question, but we don't see anywhere, we don't know of anywhere where the Beis HaMikdash basically employed or had special money changers who would have a good eye and would give it. I mean, you have to go to Yerushalayim to the money changers. There wasn't a special money changer for Oile Regel. If there were, then you would be right. Then you could go directly and not have to deal with it. But it does not seem that there was such a Metzias where they had a money changer just for the Beis HaMikdash who was able to exchange money for Maser Sheni. So
why would any money changer ever accept a defective coin and give full value? What kind of a tzaddik is he trying to be?
Right. So yeah, you would say that he's l'flim l'shur sadin. He's doing something that is again, we see from the Gemara in many instances that midas chasidus has a higher calling. You're right. If there happened to be a very chassidish or very midas chasidus money changer who said, I'm going to eat that difference, even though if I go ahead and take that money into the marketplace, I'm not going to get what I just gave you, but I'll be the good guy. So nothing prevents him from doing it. But I think the Gemara is trying to tell us that the money changing business was not exactly highbrow. It wasn't exactly the most midas chasidus the people. They were hardliners, because we're going to see from the Gemara that in just a minute, something very, very interesting with regard to exchanging. I don't want to say it yet. I'll say it in a minute. But with regard to money changers, there are money changers, and then there are tougher money changers. In other words, the money changing business is kind of really, stuck down there where people are very, very tough. So, but you're right. If you had someone who had midas chasidus and he wanted to give you full value, then of course that would be the best case scenario. But the Metzias is that there was no special money changer for Oile Regel. You had to go to the money changers in the business, and they were a tough lot. And and again, what the Gemara it basically is telling us that this whole concept of Nefesh Ra is really the money changers. The money changers are the ones with Nefesh Ra who have sort of an ill disposition to accepting money. They always like to get the benefit. I mean, even today in Eretz Yisrael through the years, I mean, you go to money changers and they give you X. You go to another money changer, he give you another couple of prutas for, right? I mean, that's what we did. We used to change money, not officially in the bank. We'd go to a money changer. Money changer maybe gave you a couple of extra shekel for if you changed $100. Okay, again, that's the market. We're talking about the market. So in other words, there was an official rate and there was an unofficial rate. But the money changers were the ones who determined that. The bank gave you X, and the money changer said, "I'll give you something a little bit different." But they're the ones who controlled this. So we see from our own time that money changers played a very important role in the exchange of money. Now think back to the time of the Beis Hamikdash, and when people all the regel, they were at the mercy of the money changers. Here they brought all this money to exchange. The money changer says, "Okay, we have a captive audience. Where are they going to go? They're not going to. How are they going to get their food? They have to come to us. We're going to market down." In any event, so this is Chizkiyahu's statement, and so the understanding is that there is a difference between sort of kodesh l'chol, that if you're machalel for regular, it's one approach, and if you're machalel for davar shebekadusha like Master Sheni, then it's a little bit different. So now let's take a look. Rashi tells us bor leporta bor lahachlif sela chaser beprutas. He wants to exchange it for prutas. Pusa b'shava lefi chasroina, to its detriment, to its lower amount. Velo yirma es chavera lepurta b'yafe, and he should not cheat or meramen to his friend with a purta b'yafe. So here he's saying that you should give him what it's really worth, the lower amount, not the higher amount. But bo lechalala. But if you come to be mechalal masasheni, lechalal masasheni oleo, mechalal oleo masa b'demei sela yofe. Then you have to give him demei yofe. Says Rashi be yofe ki iluhu yofe. It's not yofe. It really isn't. But you have to give him as if it were yofe, because it's a davar shebekadusha. Then you shouldn't have a bad eye, a nefesh ra, an ill disposition. You should give him the better amount. So, in other words, this is appealing to our higher instincts that when we're dealing with Kodesh, we shouldn't be so stingy. We should do it with a little bit of an open hand and give someone the benefit, because what's he going to do? He's just going to buy more Maser Sheni in Yerushalayim. So let's do it in a nice way. So it says, okay, Micah Amar, Borla Porta B'Shava, Masnisen Osala Shmeinan, the Kivin, the Pascha, Kidei Oina, Osala Hatzia B'Yafa. So what's the Mishnah coming to tell us? It's really that Mishnah tells us that since we're dealing with an Ainah issue, because the value of the money has decreased, right? We haven't used that word today, but we're still, Ainah is lurking in the background to everything we talk about, because it's not worth, 1/6 is worth less than a sixth or 12th, depending on the manamar. Then you're forbidden from treating it as a yofe, as a top-notch quality coin, because there's a no involved. So hachakam, even though when he comes to exchange it in Yerushalayim beprutos, likach sudas maser, to buy the sudas maser al kar chayiv b'shaveh. Of course, he's going to exchange it b'shaveh, because why? Because the money changers won't give him more. V'lo b'yafeh, but not, he won't get yafeh, because they won't give it to him. Afilu hacha, even so, sela, right? A sela, shema she'ena ela nefesh ra. You only have a nefesh ra, ukeshechalel maser aleo mechalel b'yafeh. So this is the dichotomy. When you're consecrating the coin for Maser Sheni in Chutz La'aretz, you have to have a good disposition and not a nefesh ra, even though and Jay, to your point, that when you're going to go to Yerushalayim, the money changer isn't going to treat it like a yafeh. You know that going in, but you have to treat it like a yafeh for purposes of the consecrating of the kedusha. So we know going in that there's going to be a two-tiered system. You're going to treat it like a yafeh, but you're not going to be treated like a yafeh when you come to Yerushalayim. And Chizkiah comes to teach us the masnis and diktani nostal l'maser sheni ki iluhu yafeh ka'amar. The Mishnah that says that he consecrated for Maser Sheni, it's iluhu yafe. In reality, it's not yafe. We know that, because we know at the end he's not going to get yafe. But while you're doing the exchange, it's kind of like, okay, you've got to fool yourself into saying it's really Yafeh. I've got to consecrate it like Yafeh, even though you know with a high degree of certainty that when you come to Yerushalayim, you're not going to get Yafeh. Okay, so Rashi says she'ein bo shava pruta ve'ein bo koyach litvos pidyono. He won't have the ability to exchange his pidyon. She'yitin pruta v'chalena kedama lekama masa v'loy kol masa. Okay, we'll see in a minute. So now we've set the stage, and we understand what Chizkiah is coming to tell us. We also understand the dynamics of exchanging for a yafeh and then ultimately getting less than a yafeh for getting it. So that's kind of the setting. Now comes the real pointed issue that we're going to discuss. Frek the Gemara lememra de sava Chizkiah de mazlinon. Okay, we've now set the stage. Are you going to say that Chizkiah, by doing this kind of, I won't say sleight of hand, but by understanding the dynamics, the mazlina b'masa sheni, that he's going to be mezalzel, he's going to treat masa sheni without sort of in a light manner. He's not going to be serious about masa sheni because he knows what's going on here. He knows with masa sheni, on the one hand, he's going to redeem it for more, and on the other hand, he's going to get less. So he knows going in that masa sheni is going to take a hit. I mean, when you say masa sheni, it's his food. He's the one who's going to eat it. It's not something that he has to give to the Kohen or the Levi. So he himself, instead of having 3 meals of Masa Sheni Yerushalayim, he'll have only 2 because he will be deficient. He won't have enough money to buy a 3rd meal of Masa Sheni because he's going to get less money. So that's called Mazlinon. He's playing a game here by treating Masa Sheni with less respect because of what he's doing. So that's the Gemara's kasha. The main of Sava Chizkiah de Mazlinon. But Masa Sheni, are we really going to be mezalzel Masa Sheni by playing this game? Okay, why is this a kasha? Because Chizkiah himself said, Masa Sheni she'ein bo shava pruta. So listen to this. If you have Masa Sheni that is not worth a pruta, it's not worth even a penny, then what do? If Masa Sheni is a penny, and then Omahu v'chomsho. Now remember, the principle is when you exchange Masa Sheni with your own money, as opposed to selling it on the public market, you have to add a chomesh 1/5 to the Masa Sheni. So in other words, you have to add 1/5 more money to buy the Masa Sheni if you're self-dealing. So I want to go ahead and exchange my Masa Sheni for money, and it's worth a seller. I have to have a seller and 20% more, which I'm going to take Yerushalayim. So I'm going to have more money than the actual Masa Sheni is worth to go to Yerushalayim when I go to Yerushalayim. Now, maybe thinking about it and discussing it, that chomesh may wind up being the difference between the actual value and what the money changer will give him. Because again, speculating that if he has to add a chomesh, that means he has more money than the actual Masa Sheni that he traded. Now he's going to go to Yerushalayim, and with almost certainty, the money changer isn't going to give him full value. So it's quite possible that by adding that chomesh, that chomesh will be the difference that the money changer will deplete the value, and then he'll still be left with a full seller of Masa Sheni. Again, conceptually, let's think about that.
Don't we assume that the money changer is not going to give you the full value? He needs to make the 20% for himself.
And that 20% is the chomesh that you just added. So now, by adding the chomesh, you're in a sense not cheating Masa Sheni because you're still going to have the full seller worth of Masa Sheni to redeem. So it's out of your pocket, but it's not out of Masa Sheni's pocket.
Right. But that's based on there being with the money changer. On the other hand, if you don't have, especially maybe you had large coins, so you're able to exchange it for large coins in the first place or whatever, so that you're not dealing with lots of little things that you have to go exchanging to use them, or things that are too big to use, whatever. If you've got basically right-sized coins, you don't even need the money changer. So you could walk into Yerushalayim and go to the different places in the market and spend all the money, including the fifth.
Yeah, but typically, Menashe, when you exchange Maser Sheni, you're schlepping those coins up to Yerushalayim. It could be you're going to have a sack full of prutos. You need prutos. You need dinarim because that's
right. You're going to schlep it in the way that's most convenient to schlep, because the whole idea is that you're not schlepping the food that's hard to schlep. That's
so
true.
you're going to wind up having the largest coins, which in effect aren't going to be as great for you in Yerushalayim, and you're going to have to take those large coins and get small coins because that's the way you buy food. You don't go into a store with a seller. Apparently, you go in with a shekel or a couple.
Well, or the modern day equivalent is, everybody will take $20 bills. Not everybody wants to take hundreds.
Exactly right. So you go with $100 bill, they're going to look at you. I'm sorry, can't make change. So that's a good point. So in other words, you want to take the least amount of. I don't want to have a wallet full of 20s, which will bulge my wallet. I'll have a couple of hundred, much easier. But when I go to buy the food, hundreds don't do me much good. I have to have smaller money. So that's kind of how everybody made money in commerce, is because the money changers made because you came with larger money. But the point here now we see is that. Okay, so that's the story of the Chaimish. So now let's get back.
The farmer has to always pay a premium to get it changed.
Say it again. The what?
The farmer who's coming to Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
He's always going to have to pay a commission for the money changer.
That's correct.
No way around that unless he goes directly to the Beis Hamikdash with the coins.
Right.
Pushka.
Right. Exactly. So
he has enough other money. He has other money with him to go buy the food and to entertain himself in Yerushalayim.
Yeah, but technically he should use the money that he was machalel. In other words, he should use the money that he actually
he puts that in one pocket.
Right.
And he goes right to the Beis Hamikdash and puts it in the pushka. In the other pocket, he has spending money.
You know what? Tava lo bracha. If he wants to do that and put all the big money into the pushka of the Beis Hamikdash, then fine. He's a righteous man. Now he no longer has that money, so that money has already been consecrated to Beis Hamikdash. Now he's taking his own non-consecrated money and buying Maser Sheni. That's not required of him. But yeah, if he wants to do that, then he's a chassid.
It eliminates all kinds of discussions and problems here.
Right. It's kind of like when you're given $1 for shluchei mitzvah, you guard that dollar, because if you commingle with your other dollars, then it's kind of, that money was supposed to be the shliach mitzvah.
Separate pocket.
Right, you put it in the separate pocket. You don't put it into your wallet with the other 5s or 1s or whatever. It's kind of like psychologically. Look, I'm still giving stock. I come to Eretz Yisrael, I take out money, I give it to people. It's all fine and good, but it's kind of like we say in the law. You have to have the chain of custody. I gave you $1. You should take that $1 and give that $1. It's for tzedakah. It's kind of that's the davar shebekadusha, because that there is a certain holiness to someone who gives you money for tzedakah.
That could have been the normal way of doing business. You have 2 pockets, and you go to Yerushalayim with the redeemed money for the
in one pocket, right?
You walk right into the Beis Hamikdash. There's a pushka on the outside with a lock on it, like the one at the Kotel, and you go put it in there, and you're done.
That's right. That's exactly right. So this way, yes, his mitzvah. But again, the object, of course, is to take this davar shebekadusha and use it. And ultimately, if he wants to give all that money into the pushka and then take money and buy food extra over and above, then tava lo bracha. He's we're not going to penalize him because he took non-consecrated money to buy the food. If he already gave the money to tzedakah, he gave it to the Beis Hamikdash. It's kodesh, so he gave it to the Beis Hamikdash. But the whole idea is that you should be eating that food in Yerushalayim. The mitzvah is on you to eat the Maser Sheni. So by giving it directly into the pushka of the Beis Hamikdash, you're kind of cheating yourself, because the mitzvah is on you to have hanoah, to have a real enjoyment and benefit from the food by buying that food to eat with regular money. Questionable. Do you take away from the mitzvah somewhat, because you're buying it with chol money, not with kodesh money? Again, I don't know that at the end of the day it will really matter that much, but that's kind of like sort of psychologically, why did I come to Yerushalayim in the first? I could have mailed it in. No, I did it because there's a mitzvah to eat Masa Sheni in Yerushalayim. And so am I taking away from that privilege of Masa Sheni by not using the Kodesh money? I don't know. I don't know if that's
I think also, Rabbi, that the assumption was because the amount, the value of the crop that you redeemed was going to be a lot more than you personally could eat. You would
right.
be benefiting a lot of other people. It tells you the Levi and the poor and all.
Right, exactly, exactly
It's
right. It
not just
wasn't
cheating yourself, but you're cheating the people
you're cheating
who are
others
benefiting
too.
along with you.
Right. So that's a good point. In other words, you're the whole mitzvah was to have a big Suda and to enjoy, and it's one thing for you, and it's another thing if other people aren't getting, maybe the aniyim or others who won't have the benefit of your largesse. So again, this is an interesting point. But listen, if you're a gevir and it doesn't matter to you, and you want to say, I'm going to put all of this into tzedakah, and then I'm going to take hundreds of shkalim or whatever, and I'm going to make a Suda for half of Yerushalayim, then you've accomplished your purpose. The question is it done? Is it done in the proper way? Do you have to have that money, that particular money? And l'chayre, yes, but maybe b'di'evet, no. Maybe b'di'evet, if you said, I want to right away do my mitzvah and not be burdened, and then I'll enjoy Yerushalayim, I'll buy food, I'll give everybody food, everybody will benefit. No one will be cheated from my largesse by my doing it that way. Then the question is that really fulfilling the mitzvah? Again, I don't want to comment on that just yet, but it's an interesting question as to whether or not you can sort of do it that way. But for our purposes, we're going to ask a very interesting question. So the question here, are we being mezalzel Masa Sheni because, why? Because we are using a deficient coin, a coin that doesn't have the full value for Masa Sheni. So the Gemara says, Chizkiah said, Masa Sheni she'ein bo shava pruta. If a Masa Sheni, here's an example. You redeem your food, and you put it on coins. Now I'm going to go, and then you realize a couple of pieces of food were not redeemed. Remember, you have to redeem every piece of food. So I have a couple of pieces of food that were not included in the big exchange for my money. Those pieces of food aren't worth a pruta. They're not worth a penny. So now I have unconsecrated food, because clearly I have to eat the food. But where am I going to get money for it? No one's going to give money for a couple stalks of barley or a couple of pieces of fruit. No one's going to do that. So what does he say? He says, Chizkiah, Omar, hu v'chomsho. So he says, you know what? This fruit and my chomesh, mecholel almos harishonos. I'm going to be mechalalit on the money that I already have from my first exchange. Okay, here's the scenario. I have 5 bushels worth of food that are now going to be Masa Sheni. I have a huge field, and I give Masa Sheni, and I have 5 bushels. That 5 bushels is worth 5 sloim. Okay, wonderful. I now have 5 sloim for the 5 bushels going to Yerushalayim. Then all of a sudden, I realize, wait a minute, besides the 5 bushels, I had a couple of loose stalks of grain that I have to redeem. I can't leave those. And I'm being medactic here, but those have to be redeemed for Kodesh. So now I'm saying, you know what? Okay, I'm going to redeem those. But you can't redeem those because they're not worth a pruta. Those individual stalks of grain or whatever you have, fruit or whatever it is, are not worth a pruta. How am I going to redeem it? So you play a mental game and you say, you know what? The value of this food plus chomesh on this food. Presumably, I've already given a chomesh on the other, but my value of this food in a chomesh, I'm going to tag it on to the coins, the 5 sloim that I already have from the 5 bushels. So I'm going to play a mental game, and I'm going to say, you know what? Why? Because I'm going to say, as the Gemara goes on to say, a person is never so precise in his money that he says, you know what? I exchanged 5 bushels for 5 sloim, and I have no more value on the sloim then I can add additional food. It doesn't work that way. People approximate. You know what? I've got 5 bushels. I'll use 5 sloim. Maybe it's only 4.5 sloim worth. I'm doing 5 sloim. So the Gemara is telling us that since the person is not medactic to the point where he says, I'm going to give an even exchange, 5 bushels, 4.7 sloim, whatever. No, 5 sloim I'm giving. That 5 sloim has enough room, says Chizkiah, to encompass the extra food that you forgot to include, that is now still Kodesh, and you have to be mechalel it. How are you mechalel it? By saying, you know what, I'm tagging it on to the money of the 5 bushels, so now my stray stalks are also now redeemed. Because the key question is, if you're going to go to Yerushalayim with the money, what about the food that you leave over? That it now is considered chol, and the local populace can eat it. If you're not mechalel every stalk, then someone is going to be over a lav of eating unconsecrated food, because the stalks that you didn't redeem are still kodesh. So someone is going to be over a lav. So in order to prevent anybody from in Haifa or Tel Aviv or wherever to being over a lav, you have to make sure that you redeemed every last piece of food. And the way you do it, says the Gemara, is because if you have a couple of leftovers, don't worry, those leftovers you can subsume into the larger amount, and therefore you won't have a problem. Yeah, Menashe.
Question. So I've wondered actually for a long time. I've never asked anybody. I should, but I'll ask you. So there's a procedure, like Rabbi Rosenbaum's done stuff, some of the OU, various things, but basically, Star K, whatever, but basically what it comes down to is some particular formula you say, and you put some small amount. I don't know if they say you can do a penny, if you have to do like a nickel or something, I guess, to shove a pruta or something like that, but basically a small, you get, let's say, a big container of let's say a thing of peppers or oranges or something from Israel, where there's an issue, therefore, of Truma and Meiser, and you're able to use a little bit of money to somehow take care of it all. Now, the Truma part is easy, because Truma, there's no specific amount, so you can say you're doing a very small amount. But Meiser is supposed to be a tenth. So I've kind of wondered, why is it that or how is it that you can take some amount of money that isn't anywhere near the 10th the retail price of the food to go ahead and be somehow take care of it. And I wonder if maybe somehow it has something to do with this, the idea that you're doing a little bit, and so you're not so exact, and it just works. Maybe, I don't know, or maybe you know what goes on.
So let me understand. So is your question that when I buy produce from Eretz Yisrael, and that, so if there's you're saying there's a chashash, truma, and masa, right?
Right. In other words, if you have basically, unless it has a hechsher or something that says trumas and
Right.
masers have been taken care of, and then
Right,
it's on them to
right.
take care of it.
Right.
There is a presumption. It's not a presumption that it hasn't been done. Now, admittedly, it might be, bisman as that might be, that the things are more to Rabbanan. I don't know, but still, there's definitely an issue, and yet they don't say, the instructions I've seen have never said, take 1/10 of the value and set it aside and say this thing. They say just take a little bit.
That's correct. So in other words, what our minig is that unless you're buying it from a reputable chain where you know the truma masa has been given, so the recommendation is, if let's say I go into Giant and I'm buying Jaffa oranges as an example, and unless maybe I do know, but if I don't know if anything's been done, then I have to take a portion of a small amount, and I have to take it and I have to throw it away, because basically I have to then give truma masa. Now your question is masa. You're right. So on one orange, what am I going to do? I'll have to take a 10th of the orange, of that particular orange, and say, okay, that's maser. I mean, a 10th of an orange isn't all that much, but if someone was medactic, and were totally in the dark, was truma maser given, and they want to be over a lav, then how many people do it?
But it's more than that. It's that there's, I have to see if I can find it. There's an idea of actually exchanging money for it, and as
so
well.
Who am I going to give the money to?
And then that money you then throw away. I believe.
Who do I give the money?
Right, because we can't give the money. We can't, when nobody's tahor, etc., the Yerushalayim, etc. So you take a little bit of money as an exchange, and then you're making an exchange for it, and then that money gets thrown away. But they don't tell you to take, say if it's, let's say it's 20 oranges, it costs you $10. They don't say take 2 oranges. They don't say, and do it that way. They don't say take $1 that's 10% and do it that way. They say take a nickel or a dime or something like
Right,
that. So
or something less, yeah.
How does, I'm wondering how that
Yeah,
works.
the exact mechanics I can't answer you, but I do remember, I do very much remember that when we were young and that question came up, that we were told, if you're really in doubt, then just take a little piece off the food and throw it away, and then you're mekayim the mitzvah in any event. Now, what's the minimum amount? I don't remember. Do you have to actually measure and say, well, like you said, truma is minuscule. Truma is very small. Maser is a little bit bigger because you're dealing with a bigger percentage. But still, if you can approximate and just sip off a little bit and say this is truma and maser, then you're more or less yaitza. Again, I don't have a specific answer as to how you can really be absolutely certain. But I think typically, so the answer is when you're coming to buy produce from Eretz Yisrael, buy it from a reputable, from a grocer. If you have the kosher chains, they will surely take trumas and masers.
Right, but this has come up, I know, in the last several years.
Yeah,
because Costco here hasn't been around that long. I know it's come up with since the time that we've had Costco Wheaton, where the question has come up, and the answer that came back was, rather that there were things that were produce from Israel with no indication that there was trumas and maasros taken,
right.
and the answer was that we should not avoid that. That is a real answer, and when it's a Shemitah year, we have no choice. That's the real answer.
Right.
But that if it's not a Shemitah year, we shouldn't avoid that. We should be supporting Israel. We should be buying the stuff. But here's a procedure that you do where you take a little bit off, a little bit of money,
Yeah, exactly. So the specifics, again, you have to probably ask Yishayla and get a specific answer. But I remember that's how we used to do it, is that at a time when we didn't have really kosher grocers. I mean, we had regular grocers. And when it came to produce for Eretz Yisrael, that was labeled Eretz Yisrael. Now, sometimes it may say trumas and maser taken, and then you're good. But if it's a raw fruit or something where there's no sticker, then basically, most people may not even realize it or ignore it. But if you're makbid, then you should be a little bit more specific about taking something off to at least conceptually remember the idea of trumas and masers. But
if you did that, Rabbi, you take off 10%. Why should you throw it away? You should try and sell it.
No, but what can you do with it? It's kodesh.
Yeah, no, you sell it, and then you give it to the Beis Hamikdash. You send it to
No. You're here in Silver Spring,
right.
And you're buying produce from Eretz Yisrael, and you're not clear if the trumas and masers were taken. What should you do? I mean, you take off a little bit. Who are you going to give it to?
No, it's not a question of giving. You're supposed to spend it in Eretz Yisrael originally. So at least you can convert.
But here, we're not even talking about Maser Sheni. We're talking about real Truma and Maser that should be given in Eretz Yisrael to a Kohen and a Levi, and maybe that produce was shipped Chutz La'aretz without taking Truma and Maser,
right.
And you're eating Tevel. If you eat that, you're eating Tevel because there was no Truma Maser given.
But you could give to a Kohen today, even in the Chutz La'aretz.
That might be for the
Cohen
truma.
can't eat it though.
But the truma Cohen can't eat it.
Right.
Why can't a Kohen today eat something?
Because to eat truma you have to be tar.
Right. So the whole concept of truma is kind of ambiguous because of the state of Kohanim. So symbolically you take it off because it's really the chiyuv is on you. Again, the kohen may not be able to eat it, but there's a chiyuv on you not to eat untithed or
that's why you throw it away. So that's why.
So I found what Star K says.
Yeah.
And again, there may be I'm sure there's some different opinions, but basically what they say here is that you use a coin, and they say a dime or more. I assume that's based on their definition of a current shava pruta. There were references to that. And you also separate at least 1/100th of the food, which covers the truma and trumas meiser.
Okay.
So the coin is covering. It says here the chomesh of the
chomesh. Okay, right. You have to give
meiser sheni. And then there's a whole
Interesting.
thing that you say that discusses that about how this part of the different parts of the produce are covering the truma and the meiser sheni and so on. And the end result, though, after you say that, is that you take the piece of food that you cut off, which is at least 1/100th, that you wrap it up. No, it's because if you put it in garbage and it's not wrapped up, that's not proper for kadosh. But you wrap that up and discard it. And the coin, it says nickel, dime, or quarter, should eventually be disposed of in such a manner that will not be used. And then you can eat everything else.
I mean, you can give it to the tzedakah.
No, you can't give it to tzedakah.
You can't give it to tzedakah. Why?
Because then the tzedakah's benefit isn't supposed to be kadosh. It's supposed to be used in Yerushalayim.
Interesting. Okay. So
Now,
an
interesting question would be
You send it to your
whether you could send it to Yerushalayim. That would be an interesting question.
That's an interesting question. Okay, so there you go. So the food you have to you
A
have
little bit of food, 100th, because that
100,
covers your
okay,
minimum
that you have to throw
truma,
away, you wrap it, and throw it away.
and a amount, basically a shava pruta that covers, but that effectively covers. There's a whole long thing here about explaining it, but which I don't quite follow. Maybe when we're done with the Gemara, I'll understand it. But basically that this little amount is which isn't even necessarily 100th of the cost of the food, but
Right.
that somehow covers the meiser sheni, no
That's
matter
a
how much
shame.
food.
Very interesting how that's done.
There's something analogous, a psak that I got from Rabbi Hyatt, with netta revai is somewhat analogous to Maser Sheni because you can redeem it.
Right.
I had fourth year fruit, and he said, take a dime and throw it into Sligo Creek, and you can eat the fruit.
Who says this?
Rabbi Hyatt,
He said, take it down, throw it into rock.
Fourth year fruit, right?
Fourth year fruit. Oh, so you can eat the fourth year fruit, you take a dime, and throw it into Rock Creek. What happens if someone finds the wishing well and finds the money?
Didn't cover that.
No, but at that point, it's you're mavatal it,
Mevatel. Okay, very good. Anyway, so listen to the kasha. So Chizkiah says that if you have less than a shava pruta, what do? It's okay. You take the amount plus a chomesh, and you attach it to the money that you have previously been mechalel. So what does that mean? That means when you previously were mechalel, you weren't medactic penny for penny. You approximated an amount of money larger than the amount of the fruit, so that you had some room on the coin, as it were, that if you later have a need to attach more value, you have that value on the coin. If that's what Chizkiah is saying, then how can Chizkiah say that you shouldn't have a nefesh ra, and you should take a sela at its yofa value, at its beautiful full value, not at its shava value? Then Memela, what are you doing? You're shortchanging Maser Sheni, because if you're going to say, I have a bushel full of Maser Sheni, which should be a sela, but since my sela isn't a sela, it's really only a shekel, it's okay to do that. That's what Chizkiah says. It's okay to be mechalel on Yofeh, even if in the end it's only going to be Shaveh. So we see from Chizkiah, we have a stira, because Chizkiah says on the one hand, when it comes to exchanging for the Maser Sheni, I can put it on a sela coin, even if the sela coin has been diminished, because I shouldn't have an nefesh ra, so therefore I can put it on a sela. How am I going to put it on a sela and have extra space on the sela later for a fruit that is shava pruta that I can't redeem? The only reason why I can redeem less than a shava pruta is because I'm putting it on money where there is extra money on the coin. But according to Chizkiah, there'll not be extra money on the coin, because I'm going to shortchange Maser Sheni to begin with by using a sela that isn't really a sela.
Sufficient to begin with. So
it is sufficient to begin with. So how am I going to have that extra money on the seller? This is a kasha on Chizkiah. How can Chizkiah say that you can do it b'yafeh? and therefore everything's okay, even if you know the money changer is going to give you less. But wait a minute, I have a couple of extra stalks. It's definitely, I need to
What
exchange it.
happened to the
You
Chumash?
exchange it on the previous coin, but the previous coin has no more room on it anymore.
But he has the Chumash value still.
He has to add the chomesh. No, it's the fruit and the chomesh, which means he needs extra value on the coin, not just for the fruit, but even if the chomesh. Now, a chomesh on a shava pruta isn't a whole lot. Remember, you've given chomesh before on the big amount. It's a chomesh on the shava pruta that's negligible. But the point is, you need to have space on the coin, so to speak, to be able to include the food and the chomesh. And if you've shortchanged Masa Sheni to begin with, you have nothing. So how can you be?
Why do you lose the Chumash when you have a down to the Pruta level? I don't follow.
In other words, if you have a pruta, then technically you have to give a chomesh on a pruta, which is what? Nothing almost. I mean, a chomesh on a pruta is 1/20th of a pruta. That's clearly nothing. But
it's still a Chumash. I mean, it's still a chomesh. It's still a chomesh.
Anyway. Right. So let's say you need to be safe 2 prutas worth, a pruta and a chomesh. So the next level up is another pruta. So I need 2 prutas worth of coin to be able to redeem this last amount of food. If I've shortchanged Masa Sheni to begin with, because I've treated the sela as yofeh when it should be shaveh, I have no space on my coin to exchange for this pruta. So I'm stuck. At the end of the day, how am I going to redeem some food that some poor fellow is going to eat? He's going to eat tevel because I didn't exchange it. I have no way of exchanging it anymore. It's not a shava pruta. There is no coin that will encompass that amount of food, even with the chomesh. So I'm in a catch-22. I can't redeem it, but I have tevel. What am I going to do? So that's the kasha on Chizkiah. Chizkiah, you had this whole notion that I can take advantage of Masa Sheni and use a sela for Yofeh, even though we know at the end of the day the money changers aren't going to give you Yofeh. How am I going to do that? So again, in fashion, as we've talked many, many times, the Gemara now has to revise its understanding of Yofeh. Here's what the Gemara is going to answer to give us an answer. Says the Gemara, Hachi ka'amar. Okay, this is what we're really saying. I'll tell you. Yeah,
Macy, no? Aren't you up to?
No, sorry. Okay. Let me go back to here. Okay, so the Gemara says, "My be Yofeh." What does Yofeh mean? We have a new definition for Yofeh. It's not Yofeh, it's b'toras Yofeh. So now he's adding an explanation that Yofeh doesn't mean the full value of the coin the way we've been explaining it. He means Toras Yofeh means not the beautiful value, meaning the original value. It means the for sure value. In other words, if a sela is a sela, and now the sela has been degraded to be worth a shekel, then you treat it as a shekel, because shekel is clearly the value that everybody will accept. This now goes back to your point, Jay, is that now we have to be careful because we have to know what the money changers are going to take. If the money changers are going to take 80 cents on the dollar, then 80 cents on the dollar is what you have is what's considered yofeh. If they're going to take 50 cents on the dollar, it's 50 cents. So you kind of have to know in advance before you go to Yerushalayim, how much am I going to get? That's pshat Toras Yofeh. Toras Yofeh means the real value. What we call shaveh, he's calling Toras Yofeh. Why? The trei zilzalei lo mezalzelim, because we do not, we're not mezalzel twice on the same coin. Okay, we're going to see in a minute what it means, trei mezalzelim. So basically, the Gemara has now answered Chizkiah by saying, you know what? It's not a kasha, because the truth of the matter is that there will always be value on the coin to add some negligible amount of shava pruta or whatever, because you're never going to consider the exchange as 1-for-1, meaning 100%, you will always have to reduce the value by the value that you know you're going to get in Yerushalayim. So let's take a look at Rashi, because this is an interesting twist on the whole question here. The mezalzel and some she'ein bo sheva pruta. Okay. He says, I and my chomesh yemachalel almos harishonos. This is now when he has the sheva pruta. Shichalenu aleha masa sheni. I was machalel masa sheni. Va'odin biyadi. I still have the coin in my hand. Afzer machalel al osa masa. So since I have the coin in my hand because I haven't left town yet, I'm adding some additional money onto that coin. So this is very important. A person is not mitzamtzem, he's not exact in his money. L'chalol b'shavin, to mechalol for the exact amount, but simsham shemetoch shehu yorei melifchos, because he's afraid of shortchanging it. V'nimtza ochlo below chiluf, and then he'll wind up eating without exchange. So since he's worried about it, who most of al damav, he adds extra money. Hilkoch pachas mishava pruta zeh machalal osa odev. The pachas mishava pruta is on the odev. So Rashi is telling us that when a person exchanges, he always gives more money in exchange than he believes the Masasheni is worth, for this very reason, not to wind up having some food that will be tevil. In other words, people are righteous. They're righteous. They say, I'm not going to be.
He
Exactly.
builds in margin for himself to make sure.
Exactly. Builds in a margin for himself. Alma lo perkinan b'tzimtzum v'kolshkein b'pachos. He doesn't count it for tightly even, and for certainly not for less. So he's always has it a little bit more. So then the kasha is, if that's the case, then what does he do? So how do you allow that seller? So he says, b'toiris yafeh. Says Rashi, b'shaveh. So toiris yafeh means shaveh, means the actual amount. V'hachi ka'ama, right? Kishem shekeshabo leporta b'Yerushalayim. Just like when he comes to exchange Yerushalayim, lo yikableno hamenu. Right? They won't. These money changes will. He knows they won't give him full value. Right? They'll only give him shaveh. V'yesh nizlanen b'dameha yoser miktei pachsa, and even more so, there are some money changers who will be even tighter than giving him full value, giving actual value. They'll give him actual value minus. Right? So the point is that he has to be medakdek, and he has to sort of ask in advance, how much am I really going to get for this money that I have in hand? And when he hears that he's going to get X amount, then he cannot redeem it for more than that, and therefore. And to be safe, he'll give it a little bit of a greater margin than even that. So in other words, people who want to be Mekayim the mitzvah don't do it tight-fisted. They do it with a certain largesse to allow themselves room for mistakes. So B'Toras Yafa goes on Rashi to say, Mishachalel aleo kefi damim vadoim shalo kach lo yechalel al zeh ela b'damim vadoim shalo. He has to have a vadai money, meaning a real knowledge of the value, and that's what he should exchange it for, not for full value, and not for what he thinks. Oh, I'm going to take advantage. So instead of a selah, I'll give 3 shekalim instead of 2 shekalim. In other words, do it with an open hand. That you're making sure that in the very worst case scenario, you will be covered. Right. So now, so the Gemara said, "Trey zilzale lo maslinin bay." What does that mean? What are the tray? You're not mezalzel masasheni twice. The afagav the tanan, even though the Mishnah says notzin la masasheni chal zilzula ashmin and the mischal al sela chesera below omrina harihu ka asimon or kamos hanisunas be asimon. Those the first zilzal is that even though this coin is not up to par, you don't treat it like an asimon. Remember, an asimon back in the day used to be the asimon was for the telephone. That's when we used to use asimon. But asimon is a non-valued coin. It's basically a piece of metal that has no monetary value. So the first zilzal is that we don't treat it like an asimon, even though it is a degraded coin. We don't say, oh, it's nothing. We give it some value. The Gemara considers that a zilzal. In other words, really, that coin should have no value, just like an asimon. But we're not going to do that. We're going to assign it some value. So he says that's one zilzal. Aval trei zilzal l'chalalei masa b'demei sela yofe lo. The second zilzal is not only to allow it as a coin, but allow it as to a full value coin. In other words, not only do you allow it as a coin, period, but now you're going to say it's a beautiful, full valued coin the way a sela is. That we don't do. So we say you can use it as a coin, but it's b'teiras yofe that it is in other words, Teres Yafa means Shaveh. And not only Shaveh, but he has to be medactic that Shaveh will be the lowest common denominator that a money changer will take. Because money changers, it's not one size fits all. Some will be more generous, some will be a little just generous. If he hears that there's money changers who will not take that coin even for 50%, only for 40%, then he has to reconcile his exchange for 40% of the coin, not for 50%. That's how much the Gemara tells us he has to be medactic. Okay, so this sort of, I said at the beginning, we're going to come to a point. This is that point. So we've ended the discussion right now on coinage and on the whole question of values of coinage. We're going to pick this discussion up, Mitzvah Shem, down the road, because we're not finished with it. But now, starting probably next week, Chizkiah, because we're talking about Chizkiah, the whole discussion now is going to be about Masa Sheni. Because remember, we're talking about Masa Sheni and then Masa Sheni and coinage. Now we're going to flip the switch and we're going to talk about Masa Sheni vis-a-vis other Truma, Masa, whatever, and no longer about coinage. So again, we'll pick that up next week, but that's how the Gemara is going to continue. So where have we come to the end of the day? We've reconciled that with coinage, when we say Sela Yafe, it doesn't mean Yafe, it means B'teiras Yafe. And at the end of the day, you have to do right by Masa Sheni. It's even though it's your own food, it's not Truma and Maser. So you can say, oh, Truma and Maser, I have to be more machmir because it's the kind of the Levi. For myself, I don't have to be machmir. Says with the Torah, the Gemara explaining that the Torah means you can't shortchange yourself for a davar shebekadusha. You don't have that luxury of saying, oh, so I'll have a bushel less to eat. It's not up to you. You have to be mekayim what the Torah tells us to take Masa Sheni and to exchange it and bring it to Yerushalayim. And like we were saying before, David or whoever, then we have these big sudas, and we have to make sure that everybody gets included. No one gets shortchanged. So at the end of the day, in order not to shortchange Masa Sheni, we do not allow you to take a sela, let's say worth full value, and exchange it. And the whole notion, again, this goes back to of nefesh ra. According to this Gemara, no, nefesh ra isn't the issue. The issue is you're going to wind up with tevel. Nefesh ra, okay, I can deal with. I can't deal with tevel because if somebody's going to eat unconsecrated food, that's a mitzvah. That's a lav. You're over a lav in the Torah. Nefesh ra is not a lav. Nefesh ra is okay. Be a good guy. Don't treat kodesh so harshly. But you have to treat it harshly when it comes to teva. So if you want to be a good guy, fine. You can accept coins, accept everything you want, but make sure you accept it in a fashion that at the end of the day isn't going to leave some of the food unconsecrated, and therefore someone could be over chas v'sholem in tevel. So that's the answer to our Gemara. And again, we'll pick that up in a couple of weeks on the discussion of coinage. But we're going to turn the corner here next week. So Mitchell will talk next week, and Menashe, you'll arrange whatever to get us up next week, and hopefully we'll the following week I won't be here, but next week Mitchell we will.
Sure.